Chapter 2 of The People of the Crater by Andre Norton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2 The Folk of Tav. Garin returned to consciousness through a red mist of pain. He was pinned in the crumpled mass of metal which had once been the cabin. Through a rent in the wall close to his head thrust a long spike of green, shredded leaves still clinging to it. He lay and watched it, not daring to move lest the pain prove more than he could bear. It was then that he heard the pattering sound outside. It seemed as if soft hands were pushing and pulling at the wreck. The tree branch shook, and a portion of the cabin wall dropped away with a clang. Garin turned his head slowly. Through the aperture was clambering a goblin figure. It stood about 5 feet tall, and it walked upon its hind legs in human fashion, but the legs were short and stumpy, ending in feet with 5 toes of equal length. Slender, shapely arms possessed small hands with only 4 digits. The creature had a high, well-rounded forehead, but no chin, the face being distinctly lizard-like in contour. The skin was a dull black with a velvety surface. About its loins it wore a short kilt of metallic cloth, the garment being supported by a jeweled belt of exquisite workmanship. For a long moment the apparition eyed Garin, and it was those golden eyes, fixed unwinkingly on his, which banished the flyer's fear. There was nothing but great pity in their depths. The lizard man stooped and brushed the sweat-damped hair from Garin's forehead. Then he fingered the bonds of metal which held the flyer, as if estimating their strength. Having done so, he turned to the opening and apparently gave an order, returning again to squat by Garin. 2 more of his kind appeared to tear away the ruins of the cockpit. Though they were very careful, Garin fainted twice before they had freed him. He was placed on a litter swung between 2 clumsy beasts, which might have been small elephants, except that they lacked trunks and possessed 4 tusks each. They crossed the plain to the towering mouth of a huge cavern, where the litter was taken up by 4 of the lizard folk. The flyer lay staring up at the roof of the cavern. In the black stone had been carved fronds and flowers in bewildering profusion. Shining motes, giving off faint light, sifted through the air. At times, as they advanced, these gathered in clusters and the light grew brighter. Midway down a long corridor, the bearers halted while their leader pulled back a knob on the wall. An oval door swung back, and the party passed through. They came into a round room, the walls of which had been fashioned of creamy quartz veined with violet. At the highest point in the ceiling a large globe of the motes hung, furnishing soft light below. 2 lizard men, clad in long robes, conferred with the leader of the flyer's party before coming to stand over Garin. One of the robed ones shook his head at the sight of the flyer's twisted body and waved the litter on into an inner chamber. Here the walls were dull blue, and in the exact center was a long block of quartz. On this the litter was put down, and the bearers disappeared. With sharp knives the robed men cut away furs and leather to expose Garin's broken body. They lifted him to the quartz table, and there made him fast with metal bonds. Then one of them went to the wall and pulled a gleaming rod. From the dome of the roof shot an eerie blue light to beat upon Garin's helpless body. There followed a tingling through every muscle and joint, a prickling sensation in his skin, but soon his pain vanished, as if it had never been. The light flashed off, and the 3 lizard men gathered around him. He was wrapped in a soft robe and carried to another room. This, too, was circular, shaped like the half of a giant bubble. The floor sloped toward the center, where there was a depression filled with cushions. There they laid Garin. At the top of the bubble a pinkish cloud formed. He watched it drowsily until he fell asleep. Something warm stirred against his bare shoulder. He opened his eyes, for a moment unable to remember where he was. Then there was a plucking at the robe twisted about him, and he looked down. If the lizard folk had been goblin in their grotesqueness, this figure was elfin. It was about 3 feet high, its monkey-like body completely covered with silky white hair. The tiny hands were human in shape and hairless, but its feet were much like a cat's paws. From either side of the small round head branched large fan-shaped ears. The face was furred and boasted stiff cat whiskers on the upper lip. These Annas, as Garin learned later, were happy little creatures, each one choosing some mistress or master among the folk, as this one had come to him. They were content to follow their big protector, speechless with delight at trifling gifts. Loyal and brave, they could do simple tasks or carry written messages for their chosen friend, and they remained with him until death. They were neither beast nor human, but rumored to be the result of some experiment carried out eons ago by the Ancient Ones. After patting Garin's shoulder, the Anna touched the flyer's hair wonderingly, comparing the bronze lengths with his own white fur. Since the folk were hairless, hair was a strange sight in the caverns. With a contented purr, it rubbed its head against his hand. With a sudden click, a door in the wall opened. The Anna got to its feet and ran to greet the newcomers. The chieftain of the folk, he who had first discovered Garin, entered, followed by several of his fellows. The flyer sat up. Not only was the pain gone, but he felt stronger and younger than he had for weary months. Exultingly, he stretched wide his arms and grinned at the lizard being, who murmured happily in return. Lizard men busied themselves about Garin, girding on him the short kilt and jeweled-set belt which were the only clothing of the caverns. When they were finished, the chieftain took his hand and drew him to the door. They traversed a hallway whose walls were carved and inlaid with glittering stones and metalwork, coming at last into a huge cavern, the outer walls of which were hidden by shadows. On a dais stood 3 tall thrones, and Garin was conducted to the foot of these. The highest throne was of rose crystal. On its right was one of green jade, worn smooth by centuries of time. At the left was the third, carved of a single block of jet. The rose throne and that of the jet were unoccupied, but in the seat of the jade reposed one of the folk. He was taller than his fellows, and in his eyes, as he stared at Garin, was wisdom and a brooding sadness. "It is well." The words resounded in the flyer's head. "We have chosen wisely. This youth is fit to mate with the daughter, but he will be tried as fire tries metal. He must win the daughter forth and strive with Kepta." A hissing murmur echoed through the hall. Garin guessed that hundreds of the folk must be gathered there. "Urg," the being on the throne commanded. The chieftain moved a step toward the dais. "Do you take this youth and instruct him, and then will I speak with him again. For," sadness colored the words now, "we would have the rose throne filled again, and the black one blasted into dust. Time moves swiftly." The chieftain led a wondering Garin away. End of chapter 2.